All right, hi everyone. So this is a very requested video on how to use some of the basic functions on Microsoft Teams. I do have another video that's not quite as in-depth, and I noticed that there was still a need. So I'm going to do this first video, which can be used by anybody using Microsoft Teams, whether they are a student, whether they are a parent, whether they are a staff member. This is going to be the generic how to create chats, how to make phone calls, how to share files in phone calls, and all of the basics. And then staff, I'm going to have a separate second part to this video that's going to specifically speak to the Teams and the class aspects of using Microsoft Teams as a virtual classroom. So right now, let's get started. My mother has very generously loaned me her laptop, so I will be recording on my laptop, but I will be calling her laptop, which is side by side, so that I can show you some of the features of the call, and that way I can get into the call properly. Now, I haven't finished it yet, but I'm going to be making some basic step-by-step instructions on how to do some of this stuff, and look for this little help feature there. I'm probably going to throw it up on Teachers Pay Teachers as well soon enough, just for free, just so you guys can access it. And basically what it does is this picture will show you what I'm going to be using and talking about the most in a phone call. Okay, so first off, how do I start a phone call? Which, as I go through this video, is probably going to end up very long. There is at least 2 ways to do everything in Microsoft Teams. So please keep in mind this was software originally built for a corporation to be used with the Microsoft suite. I am on a Mac, so already it doesn't like me. But if you kind of keep that in the back of your head, it makes a little more sense why things are laid out the way that they are. So the way that I start phone calls and chats with people is I go to the chat function on the left-hand bar here, and I either find the person, or if it's just too much to try to find them, again, 2 ways that you can do this. You can either right-click on the chat, and you've now got a new chat option, which opens a window and you can type in a person's name. It will not allow you to create multiple chats with that person. So if you look on the left here, you can see I've already got one open with my mom, Sharon Slater. Thanks, Mom, for letting me use your computer. And if I try to type her name in again, her name will pop up, and as soon as I click it, it brings up this chat. And if I don't add anybody else to the chat, if I simply go down here and click in the text box to type, it deletes that new chat and automatically puts me into the one that I already have open with her. So if you either just don't feel like looking for someone that you talked to ages ago because this is getting full, or if you're not sure if you even have a conversation open with that person, you can either right-click, new chat, or you can go here to the little pencil, and then that will create a new chat for you as well. Okay, so either way, we're still in this tab, this vertical me bar, and I'm still in the same program. So once I have the chat open with somebody, you'll notice that there's options here. Okay, the options up here are very important. This is to start a video call, and you can turn your video on and off at any point once you've started it. This is to start an audio call, so no video, just voice. And again, you can change your mind and turn on the camera halfway through. This is to start sharing your screen with that person, which will automatically put you into a phone call. This is to add people to the conversation. So if I start talking to my mom and I'm like, you know what, I think so-and-so would really benefit from being a part of this conversation, I can click add people, search for their email or their username. Because this is tied to our HWDSB, as soon as I start typing in a person's name, it is automatically tied to their email address. It will find them. So as you can see here, everyone who's staff is showing up. Cancel. And then this just kind of creates a little pop-out window here. So this is the chat here and just the chat. So if I wanted to talk while doing something else on the rest of my screen, it's just a smaller window basically. Okay, so that's one option, is you can start a phone call from a conversation. Second option is on the me bar over here, there is this call. So if you go to calls, I find this way is a little cumbersome because it automatically just loads everybody and I find it a bit much. But you can go into your contacts, you can find a contact, you can look for different people. There is a speed dial option if you want to create a specific group of people that you talk to all the time. And you can, add speed dial, look for names. You can click down here to make a call and you can start typing in anybody's name. These are my most recent contacts for my calls. And you can either click audio or video call right beside their name. But as soon as you start typing in a name, you'll see all the options pop up again. Okay? So again, you can either go through the chat or go through the call option. But as soon as you are in a phone call, it automatically creates a chat anyway. So no matter which way you do it, it's gonna have the same result. So I'm gonna go into the chat, and this is with my mom, so I'm gonna ring up and silence her laptop beside me here. I'm gonna put mine on mute just so it doesn't have feedback. All right. All right, apologies for that mild bit of feedback. So now I'm in the phone call with her. And a lot of us get to this screen and then we're like, oh no, someone said something in the chat and I can't see it. So if I'm on her screen and I specifically send something, I can see here this little orange bubble has appeared. That's how I'm going to get to that conversation. So as soon as I click on that, boom, conversation appears. Okay. The other way to get to the chat is to simply click on the chat here. This is the same conversation that we just saw right here. Same conversation. I can exit out of it, show it, hide it. Same conversation, it's just bigger. So if someone maybe sends me a picture and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, I just can't read it. And I click on it, it should, it pops up a little bit bigger here. But if I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, you know what? I just want to see it a little bit bigger. I can click on the chat and it will be here. I can also use this to navigate so I can talk to other people while I'm still in the meeting. Okay. And this is true for if you're calling one person or if you are in a meeting, I forgot to say. So just to quickly double back, apologies. To call in person, you're using the chat or the call function. You can do this with small groups or you can do this with individual people. If you're calling a lot of people, like if you've set up a meeting, you have to go into the calendar or you can go into the chat. So you can see here in the chat, I've got DC staff meeting. So this was my staff meeting. As soon as somebody starts typing in the chat of the staff meeting, this will appear on my left-hand side. It's even got the little calendar icon because it was a meeting. And I can click on this and I can join the meeting from up here. Okay? I can see who's in the meeting by clicking the people. Any files that were shared with me are up here. Any files that were sent or received during this chat. And I can join. The other way to do it is to go to the calendar and look for your meeting in the calendar. So I'll see if I have any left from last week. Guess not. The biggest thing that we were finding is that once a meeting had started, we had to go in and make sure to delete it afterwards for security reasons. So not necessarily showing up, but technically they would show up at any time and it would just be a block. So if I just said test, it would be right there. Okay. And to join, you would just click on your meeting and then there would be an option in the upper right-hand corner to join. Okay, so if you're in a meeting, that's how you do it. You go through the calendar or you go through the chat. If you're calling one or a small group of people, you can either go through the calling option or you can go through the chat option. This is why I always go to the chat, because it's the one that works for both. So apologies for that little divergent there, but so here we are, we're in the chat. Now, a lot of people, once they get here and they participate in the chat, they can't get back, okay? And they get really upset because, especially if someone is sharing a screen with them, now the window is very, very small. So the best way to do it is to make sure you don't hit this WE bar, W-E, WE bar, but you're gonna click, double click anywhere else in that box, and boom, it pops up bigger, okay? So that's one thing as well. And if you have multiple people in the conversation, if you click on their bubble, or even if they're at the bottom, if they have their webcam on and you click their bubble, it will put them to the front and it will make them the biggest screen so that you can see it. So this WE bar here, there's a lot of different things we can do with it, and Microsoft is always adding to it. So the main one is show conversation, okay? And that's the chat box that I was talking about. If you're in a meeting with multiple people, there will also be a little hand right here, okay? And that little hand is a new feature that they have added for groups. I'm assuming 3 or more people. But what it basically does is it raises your hand. And what that does is a visual cue so that you can see, if you are facilitating the meeting, who has something they want to say. So if we are having a discussion and I have a question about whatever we are discussing in a staff meeting, I can just put my hand up and wait my turn. And that way you're not having people cutting each other off, people feeling like they didn't get a chance to ask their question. The only downside is that it puts it in the order of the participants, which tends to be in alphabetical order. It does not rearrange you to be in the order of people who raised their hand. So you could be waiting for a while if the person doesn't notice that you raise your hand right away and they start going down the list alphabetical. So the list is, if you click on this the little people here, shows participants. So this shows everybody who's in the meeting. This is also where you have a little bit of control as an administrator. And I will speak more to that in the administrator specific meeting, I think. But basically, there will be 3 dots that will appear here if you are in a group chat, especially with your students. And you can forcibly mute or eject people from the meeting. And I do believe as of the newest update that ability has been removed from student accounts so that students cannot mute each other and otherwise cause distress to each other during a meeting. So that's by clicking the participants. Now, the only thing that I have noticed is that during meetings, it is a little difficult to monitor the conversation and the participants because you're kind of switching back and forth. So a lot of times what will happen is people will put their hand up, which if the person's going down the list of attendees in the meeting, they will see your hand up. But then they will also type their question in the chat box, and then that makes sure that you know in what order to answer people's questions. Some people use the question method where they just write the word question so that it keeps their spot in line. Other people actually type out their question, totally up to you. But those are the 2 main bars there. This is how long the call has been. This is our camera button. This is our microphone button. If these are grayed out for some reason and they do not allow you to click on them, it's because there's an issue with your settings. Now, I did speak to this in a previous video. You can go to my channel and take a look, but basically you're going to be going into device settings and making sure that you've given the right permissions to your device in order to actually use your microphone and your camera. Please take note, if you were using a desktop computer, it does not have a built-in microphone. It does not have a built-in webcam. So unless you plug those devices in to use, they are not available for you. Laptops, iPads, tablets, they should have those built in. Some tablets don't. They should have them built in, so it shouldn't be a problem. If you do, you have to watch my other video about going into the settings. Now, you can transfer, And this one showing background effects is pretty new and is kind of being liked by a lot of staff. To my knowledge, you have to have the newest version of this program. If your computer is older and therefore running an older version of Microsoft Teams, that might not be an option for you. But essentially what that allows you to do is pick a background and it green screens you. So if you don't want your home being visible, but for whatever reason you have to turn on your camera, you can pick a neutral or fun background. So that way you're not showing your home and your family, potentially anybody who lives with you in the background, but you are still able to be on camera. So that's background settings. Start recording. This is what I have been using for coding club. So what we do is we have a group meeting with a person, a specialist who comes in and teaches the kids some different tools. And then we record the meeting so that anybody who wasn't able to attend the meeting is able to watch the recording after the fact. Okay, so those are all options there. Okay. And those are the main ones. Yes, you can transfer and put people on hold and everything else, but they're not really common that you're going to be using. And right now I'm focusing on the main nitty-gritty. So to just quickly recap, if you're starting a call with a group or a small group or an individual person, you can either go to the call option and create a call, or you can go to the chat option, open up a chat window you already have with them, or otherwise create a new chat through right-clicking or through the pencil button and then typing their name in. If it is a group, you also have the ability to name the group by clicking this little arrow here and then naming the group. To name the group, you need at least 3 members of the group, so yourself and 2 other people. Otherwise, it's just an individual chat and it will not allow you to rename it. Okay, so that's the basics of getting on here. Now, once you're on here, sharing your screen. Okay, so I'm going to click back into here. So this is probably what your screen is going to look like with 1 or multiple people here. Now, to share your screen, what you're going to do is you're going to click this share button right here. This brings up a couple options, okay? First option is the one that I always tell people to default to if they are not sure. The first option is your whole desktop. So what that does is that allows you to share your whole computer screen. So whatever I see, you see as the person who I'm sharing with. However, I personally am on a personal MacBook computer. I don't necessarily want to share my entire desktop with you. If I only want you to look at a file, I want you to look at one window, one object that I want you to see at a time. I'm going to go to one of the window options. So any programs you have open will appear here under Window. And PowerPoint specifically has its own just because, again, this is a Microsoft program. It's meant to be used with the Microsoft suite. So this means that the first option is always going to be Microsoft Teams because you always have to have Microsoft Teams open in order to be able to be in the meeting. So the first option you'll see here is always going to be Microsoft Teams. The second option is anything else you might have open. So I opened a PDF prior to this so that I can give you a bit of a show. Okay, so if I share desktop, so the first thing that you're going to notice is that it might give you a little pop-up that says, you know, if you would like to share a portion of your screen, click and drag. I just click and it allows me to share the entire screen. I can tell I'm sharing the screen because there is a faint red line that goes all the way around the perimeter of my screen. Okay, so this means that if I want to show you multiple things at the same time, like multiple files, that I can do that. So I can show you 2 different random PDFs that I happen to have open at the same time. Okay, but if I only wanted you to see a great classmate, and this is going to be an important tip for people who are facilitating meetings and having to monitor the chat while they share something like a PowerPoint, like a staff meeting. If I only wanted to share the great classmate, what the downside to this is that if I now try to monitor the chat, everyone is going to see my chat window inside their window, and it gets really confusing. So it's really kind of hard. So what you're going to do instead is you're going to stop sharing that. Instead, you're going to click share, and you're going to click a great classmate, because this is the only thing I want to share. Now, you'll see that the red line is only around the one file. This means that no matter where I put it on the screen, everything that's selected will be shown. I can even minimize it, and it will still share just this window. It pauses it, so I can't make any changes, but it still appears on the other person's screen until I click X and actually close it. Okay, this means that I can open up Microsoft Teams, I can have the chat visible, and then I can also open up my file here, and I can monitor the chat at the same time that I click through a PowerPoint presentation. And the people in the meeting are only going to see the PowerPoint presentation. They're not going to see any other alerts, anything else that's showing up on my computer screen. So if I show you that from the other perspective, as the receiver of the share screen, so it doesn't look like I'm able to show that, my apologies. But basically it gets visually very, very confusing for people, because what will happen is they will see a double window, because they will see your version of the chat and whatever else you happen to have here, people's names or icons, and then they'll also see their own. So what ends up happening is there ends up being a chat bar here and a chat bar here, and then people get confused because then there's one bar here and a second bar here. So I really discourage sharing your Microsoft Teams windows with people if you can help it. I have also been told that when you share, if you have any kind of PowerPoint or anything else that has audio embedded into it, there will be a pop-up that says, would you like to share the audio as well? And you have to check that off, because if you don't, you're playing audio and you're hearing it, but nobody else is. And that's something that I'm still discovering and working through. So hopefully this covers the basics. If you want to create a call, you go through calls or chat. If you want to schedule a meeting with someone, you go to calendar. If you want to join a meeting, you go to calendar or possibly chat. Sometimes it doesn't appear in chat until someone else starts typing in the meeting's chat. So right there to get started, there's your 3 key icons, and chat is the common one out of all of them, which is why I use it the most. Then once you're in the chat, you've got your camera and your microphone. Check out my other video if those aren't showing up to troubleshoot how to get them working. You've got your conversation button so that you can see the chat while being in the meeting. You've got your participants button so that you can see who else is in the meeting with you. And there's usually a little hand here as well if you've got a group meeting, so that you can raise your hand if you've got any questions or comments. You've got more actions here, and depending on your version is how many different options you'll have. But you can start recording, you can show different background effects like a green screen, you can even go into device settings and fix your microphone and webcam. And then the one that I talked mostly about this time was sharing your screen, and if you share here, if you're unsure, use the desktop, and it just means that anything you see, they will see. Get a visual double check that it's working, or sorry, an auditory double check that it's working before you take off running, because sometimes it's a bit of a delayed reaction. And then you've got, if you want to show one window, and a window is any one program or one file that is open at a time. So even though I've got multiple PDFs, there we go, only the one is right there, okay? And now as soon as I close that, that's no longer an option because I've shut the program down. My Adobe Reader is still there, but I haven't actually opened any files. Now if I open this one, because it was minimized, it should appear right there. So sometimes it's just, if it's not appearing, it might just be because you've got it minimized or you don't actually have the file open, and that's why it's not appearing right there for you. Okay. The last thing is that if someone is sharing their screen with you, which I unfortunately cannot show because I am recording my screen. But if someone is sharing their screen with you, you have the option down here. There's usually a little pop-up that squeezes in between the hide participants and the hang up, and it says request control. Now, what that allows you to do is I will often use that when I'm troubleshooting with people. That allows whoever requests control to take over and manipulate and otherwise interact with the shared object. So if I share my desktop, if my mother shares her desktop with me and I'm seeing her desktop on the screen, I can request control, and then I have my mouse, and my mouse will actually be on her computer. She will see my mouse there, and I can actually open up files, I can close things, I can reshape things. She can take that control away from me at any time, but so long as she accepts giving me control in the first place, I can otherwise interact with her computer. And the reason that I mention this at the end of the video is because a lot of people have been contacting me, and please feel free to contact me, drop a comment. If you're HWDSB, send me an email. As you can see, my name and my mom's name are right here. And I will walk you through this, but I will often say, please call me on Microsoft Teams so that I can take control of your computer. Because if you share, and you share desktop, and then I ask for control and you give it to me, I have control of your computer. I can see is everything on your computer. I can open things, close things, delete things. I can do whatever I want until you take that permission away from me. Okay? So if you do have a techie person who wants to help, that might be a good way to do it, because then you're not saying, okay, click on this. No, you're a little more to the right, a little more to the left. No. And you're trying to like hot or cold game it. This makes it a lot easier. So I think that's everything. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm sorry that it's so long, but if you have any comments, questions, concerns, drop it in the comments, send me an email, and otherwise reach out to me. I am more than happy to help you with this kind of stuff, especially with everything being shut down. I am a music teacher, and unfortunately it's very, very hard to teach music online, so I have become the IT person, and I do not mind helping people at all learn any of this stuff, okay? So I hope you have a good night, and we will talk soon in our next video, okay? Thanks.